Thank you very much, Chair. You're very welcome, and thank you very much for coming to here, Dr. Mahoney. It's really good that we're at this point, and I suppose coming from the previous session we had earlier, I was very confused that, or maybe that's the wrong word, or disheartened that a lot of the questions, a lot of the things came. This is very difficult, and there is a hesitancy because people have struggled to legislate for this so far. But the fact is, and you often highlight this, that there are children in this country who are not getting their rights addressed. Families are in lacuna of the law, and the last session of this committee, to me, didn't furnish me with any hope that the departments were really looking towards the remit of this committee, and that is one of them is to actually, legislate and to look after the rights and the interests of all parents and the children that we have existing and alive and living in loving families in this country. So I suppose my question to you is, and it might be maybe a naive question, and I'm trying to get my head around all the legalities of all of this. So my apologies. Within the AHR bill, and it does outline in part 7 the restrictions or the requirements for surrogate mothers and domestic surrogacy. Is there a rationale or a reason or a mechanism to move those restrictions or requirements in a parallel way to actually register and allow children who are born in international surrogacy to be accommodated under the same legislation for the domestic surrogacy, or not under the same requirements, that the mother must be, at least 25, and she previously gave birth to a child, that all these things must be mirrored, and that there is a way to, check those requirements on international surrogacy. And one thing the Department of Health said in their statement was that it's generally understood that most foreign surrogacies involve commercial payments beyond reasonable costs. So I suppose for me, as a complete newcomer to all of this, the Department of Health state that they generally understand this to be in a practice and normal code. The surrogacy, bodies and people who are involved in it do not mention commercial payments, do not mention it's more compensation, reasonable costs, but they generally understand that to be the way. Our issues papers say that, that there's no official data, no reliable source. Where are they getting, in your knowledge, where are they getting this general assumption when we don't have any official data or reliable source for recording any of this? And we don't have reliable sources because our departments are failing to actually, or keeping their heads in the sand in reality of modern life and our global world that we are. And our citizens are partaking in international surrogacy, and we have to look after the citizens, whether people agree with it or not. There's children born and deserve rights.
Okay, thank you, Senator McGreehan. So, on that first issue of the discussion this morning around a lot of things being described as being very difficult, again, that was my sense as well, that the reason being given for certain things not being done was because they're difficult. And to me, that doesn't seem to be a legitimate reason. When I was writing my report, it would have been much easier for me to say I'm not going to say anything about international surrogacy, because not every country or no other country has yet designed a framework specific for this, and so therefore I'm not going to try. That would have been a much easier path. It would have taken me a lot less time, but that wasn't the route I decided to go down. Just because we are the first to do something does not have to mean that we will never do it, or that we will only follow, that we will never lead. So my mandate that I got for that report was to come up with proposals based on international children's rights law and drawing on the best material available from the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child, from the UN Special Rapporteur on the sale and sexual exploitation of children, from the European Court of Human Rights. What I attempted to do was to say this is what this law would look like. And, you know, yes, of course, there may be points of detail that could be tweaked and so on, but to my mind, just because it's difficult and challenging and complicated simply is not a reason to avoid doing it. And there is a principled way to design that law from scratch and to be a country that takes the lead and shows how we might do this. It's also a reflection of what I said earlier on in response to Deputy Function's question, which is that the workarounds which perhaps are available and which work in other countries might not work so well here, and so therefore we have to adapt to that reality and to what we need here. Could we mirror domestic requirements in respect of what we will or will not recognise internationally? Yes, I think is the simple answer. We could say that and make it clear, around, for example, the minimum age or the requirement that you have had another child or so on. Yes, we could. I think the commercial question is where things become a bit complicated, because I think by its nature, the reality is that most people who engage in international surrogacy, I think it will have had a commercial dimension, because how else are you going to identify a surrogate internationally is the reality there. Identifying somebody who will act as an altruistic surrogate for somebody in another jurisdiction is likely to be very challenging. So I think it is fair to say that the majority, or whether it's all or not, but certainly the majority of international surrogacy will have a commercial dimension. That then gives us the challenge that if that is going to continue to be available in other jurisdictions, which it will, and there will continue to be Irish couples bringing children back to Ireland who engaged in commercial surrogacy that complied with local laws in other jurisdictions, we have to respond to that reality. Right now we're not responding to it. Right now we are pretending it doesn't exist. So we have to have some form of framework for dealing with that. The detail can be worked out, but having no framework for it, we know right now that that is problematic and that violates the rights of children and the rights of families. So we have a choice. Do we continue to allow that situation to persist, or do we grasp the nettle?